Once upon a time, there was a little boy upon whom his mother and father showered nothing but love, kindness, warmth, and all that stuff. He had his own little room in a big house in the middle of a pretty forest. He wanted for nothing. All the toys in the world were his, all the paints, all the books, paper, pens. All the seeds of creativity were implanted in him from an early age. It was writing that became his first love. Short stories, fairy tales, full novels, all happy, colorful things about bears, piglets, angels, and so forth. Some of them were good, and some were very good. His parents' experiment had worked. The first part of his parents' experiment had worked. It was the night of his 7th birthday that the nightmares first started. The room next door to his own had always been kept bolted and padlocked for reasons the boy was never quite sure about, but never quite questioned until the low whirring of drills, the scritchety scratch of bolts being tightened, the dull fizz of unknown things, and the muffled screams of a gagged child began to emanate through its walls on a nightly basis. "What were all those noises last night, Mommy?" the boy would ask after every sleepless night, to which his mother would ever reply, "Oh, little cat, that's just your wonderful but overactive imagination playing tricks on you." "Oh, do all boys of my age hear such sounds of abominations nightly?" "No, my darling, only the extraordinarily talented ones." "Oh, okay, cool." And that was that. And the boy kept writing, and his parents kept encouraging him with the utmost love. The sounds, the words, and the drills and the screams kept going on, and the stories got darker and darker and darker. They got better and better, due to all of the love and encouragement, as is often the case, but they got darker and darker, due to the constant sound of child torture, as is also often the case. It was the day of his 14th birthday, a day he was waiting to hear the results of a story competition he was shortlisted for. Then a note came out from under the door of the locked room, which read, "They have loved you and tortured me for 7 straight years as to nothing but an artistic experiment. An artistic experiment that worked. You don't write about little green pigs, do you, anymore?" The note was signed, "Your brother." The note was written in blood. He axed through the door to find his parents sitting there, smiling, alone, his father doing some drill noises, and his mother doing some muffled screams of a gagged child. Between them was a little pot of pig's blood, and his father told him to look at the other side of the blood-written note. The boy did, and found he was the first prize. He won the first prize in the short story competition. They all laughed. The second part of his parents' experiment was complete. They had moved house soon after that, though the nightmare sounds had ended. His story stayed strange and twisted, but good. He was able to thank his parents for the weirdness that they put him through. And years later, on the day that his first book was published, he revisited his childhood home for the first time since he left. He idled around his own bedroom, all the toys and the paint still there. Then, he went to the room beside it, that had the dusty drills, the padlocks, the electrical cords lying around, and he smiled at the insanity of it all. But he lost his smile when he came across a 14-year-old child that had been left to rot in there, barely a bone of which wasn't broken or burned, in whose hand there lay a story which was scrawled in blood. The boy read that story, a story that only could be written under the most sickening of circumstances. It was the sweetest, most gentlest thing he had ever come across. What was even worse about it, it was better than anything he had ever written, or had ever so. He burnt the story, and covered the corpse of his late brother back up, and never spoke to anyone about it. Not his parents, not his publishers, not to anybody. The final part of his parents' experiment was over. Katorian's story, The Writer and the Writer's Brother, ended there, in a fashionably downbeat mode, without touching the equally downbeat, but more self-incriminating details of a truer story after he had read the blood-written note and broken into the next-door room. It was, of course, his brother he found in there alive, but brain-damaged beyond repair. And that night, while his parents were sleeping, the 14-year-old boy held a pillow over his father's head for a little while, and just after waking her up for a moment just to see her dead blue husband, he held the pillow over his mother's head for a little while too.